When you think about getting married, you think about all the happy things. You think about the wedding. You think about being with the person that you love for the rest of your life. We had the conversation about NFP when we were starting to think about marriage, and especially then when we were engaged.
Well, I had never heard of NFP before, and the reason for that is that I was not raised Catholic. Until I started hanging out with Catholics, Ellen and some of her friends, I had never heard about NFP.
For me, it seemed like something that would cause a lot of anxiety because I just assumed that it probably didn't work very well.
My perception of NFP was, I guess, I kind of lumped it in with rhythm method and all this. It basically, for me, was just, the technical term for me was Catholic voodoo.
Natural family planning is a natural method of being prudent about the planning of a family. And so, from the natural perspective, it's a strong case to be made that this is the wise and the prudent way to treat the bodies as they are according to natural systems and to allow the body to flourish, to be exactly as it was designed to be by God.
Natural family planning is a method of using the knowledge of the natural fertile and infertile times in a woman's menstrual cycle to help plan a family. The different methods of natural family planning use different signs or combinations of signs of fertility or infertility. So one method called the ovulation method uses primarily the changes in a woman's cervical mucus to determine whether she's fertile or infertile. The symptothermal method, as the name implies, combines symptoms with thermometer readings, temperature. You can actually do hormone testing and determine by the woman's hormones when the fertile and infertile periods are. It ain't rocket science. It's again, with the research that's been done and with the tools we have, it's fairly simple.
I think for me, natural family planning is just a term that is now trying to encapsulate or, teach a new way, a new culture within marriage. But it started before I was born.
NFP is a way for us to live God's will. And when you are aware of this precious gift of life-giving, and in the context of natural family planning, there is no way you could exclude God from your life.
It wasn't this abstract thing about timing. It was like, how's your body feeling? You have to notice your body. You have to pay attention. And I've always considered myself to be a really self-aware person, aware of my body, but I realized, wow, this is about really being aware of your body.
Seeing the results, even in our own lives, people ask us all the time, so did you ever get pregnant without knowing? And so I can honestly say, no, we knew we were fertile.
I started talking to people who were married and practicing NFP and learning that it was effective for them.
When used correctly, it's as effective as artificial contraception. That was surprising to me. But Ellen made it very clear to me that this was something that was a non-negotiable part of our relationship. She had a desire to stay within church teaching on this. I jumped on board finally because I wanted to marry Ellen.
I kind of shoved you on board.
She kind of shoved me on board, but I ultimately got on board hoping that eventually I would come around and make the decision my own.
You don't learn about any of this when you're in school. You take health classes for years in middle school and high school, and nobody ever tells you. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
I think that there are misconceptions about its effectiveness that are totally unwarranted.
Well, we found it to be really effective because, I don't know, it's been, the last 7 years have gone as planned.
It does work. It is something that you can live with and not something that you have to turn on and turn off. You live with your fertility, and that you will very quickly find that it's a blessing instead of a curse.
NFP today is very effective. If used correctly and accurately, It's as high as 98 to 99% effective. It does compare to best use of oral contraceptive pills or other forms of barrier methods that people use today.
I think probably the main reason that I'm comfortable as a physician recommending natural family planning is that I know the science and research behind it, and I know that I'm not recommending Vatican roulette. I'm recommending something that really works, and I'm recommending something that's 100% safe.
You need to know the basic human physiology and what we're teaching and looking for. We're looking for the fertile window. And what happens is when an egg is ripening in the ovary, estrogen, which is a female hormone, is produced, and that production increases cervical mucus, which is a great transport medium for sperm. So when that occurs, and then the egg itself is ripe, and it's really only lives for about 24 hours. So knowing where that fertile window is, which is approximately 6 days of each cycle, knowing where that fertile window is where you can either achieve pregnancy or you can avoid pregnancy.
It does require some sacrifice, but so does the rest of life.
Eric and I will never, ever tell people how much we love to abstain from having sex. We're never going to be the people who say, this is just so good for our marriage, because it's hard, but it's a sacrifice we're willing to make. It's good because it forces us to have conversations about whether we're ready to have another child.
Personally, for me, it has helped me to grow. And I think our society cringes at the word sacrifice. But we do. Love is a sacrificial love. You don't see the immediate benefits, but you see them later.
The beauty of NFP is that it challenges couples to develop the virtues, to be temperate and prudent, and not fall into use, not fall into just doing whatever we want to do. Animals act on their instincts. We're not animals. We are able to control the instincts. And the beautiful thing about the virtues is that when we strengthen one of the virtues in one field, that virtue within us is strengthened in all of the fields.
What finally brought me on board was just the natural aspect of it, you know, the big N at the front of NFP. The fact that we are practicing a method of family planning that doesn't involve Ellen dosing herself with hormones in the morning. When we go to the grocery store, we don't look for hormone-enriched anything. We look for the most natural thing we can afford, really. Why would I couple that with desiring her to pop a pill every morning?
It has given me, I think, some credibility with my friends who use contraception, because I'm able to talk about just how it's natural and how it's beautiful, and it's nice for me to have a way to talk to people about it that isn't about sin or what the church says or that. It's just kind of like, hey, this is natural and it's nice.
I love that it's natural. I love that I don't have to deal with side effects at all.
I like the fact that it's natural too, because I'm not expecting her to take a daily pill or whatever that could possibly be contributing towards the detriment of her health. I mean, I couldn't forgive myself in a sense if 10 years from now we found out she was sick because of whatever side effects or issues, unnatural chemicals that people put into their bodies.
Natural family planning really uses a woman's natural physiology and fertility. There's no health risks associated with natural family planning. It's inexpensive. There are so many benefits to a couple as opposed to the contraceptives that are on the market today. All of them have health risks associated with them.
The green movement and all natural movements toward ecology say that you let the system be what it's designed by nature to be, and it functions at its highest level. Well, by introducing contraceptives into the female body, you're changing a system. And so you restore a system by removing what is foreign and allow the system to operate the way it was designed.
Certainly everybody in my family, they use contraception. It's just a given. It's not even, they're a bit scandalized by me not using it. From having come from a contraceptive mindset, which I was in for a very long time, I was separating my fertility from my sexuality And then there was this sense of my constant availability.
The forms of contraception on the market today fall into about 3 different categories. The first would be when you're either blocking or destroying sperm. That'd be the barrier methods, condoms, sponges, spermicides, IUDs. The second method suppresses ovulation and also affects the menstrual cycle, and those would be our hormone or synthetic hormone, which you can take by pill or injectable, patches. And then the third is just where you destroy fertility completely, and that's through sterilization. The risks are increased cardiovascular disease, increased risk of stroke, increased risk of DVTs or deep vein thrombosis, which are blood clots, and also the World Health Organization has actually cited synthetic estrogen as a primary carcinogen, and it has been linked to an increase in breast cancer for women who use the high-dose, very strong corticosteroid hormones, which is what we have on the market today.
One of the risks, which isn't always told to women, is that it could result in the death of their new baby that they didn't even know was there. I had a patient a couple of years ago who wasn't my patient yet, but brought her children to see me and was seeing a gynecologist. After I saw her kids for a checkup, she said, "Could I talk to you for a second?" and drew me aside and said, "Is it true that IUDs prevent implantation of the embryo after fertilization?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "One of my friends told me that, and my doctor never told me that, and I'm angry." So she was really unhappy that she was using an IUD and didn't realize how it worked.
When I was using contraception, or even when I wasn't using contraception before I'd really engaged in NFP, it was hard for me to understand what was wrong with it. But now, more in a practical way, I can see what it's lacking. And now the fullness is available to us and for our marriage, which is wonderful.
Contraception shuts out God's plan, and so the covenant with God is forgotten or shoved aside or rejected. And without God, marriage is bound to have problems.
And at the heart of the issue, we're taking many of the things that make a woman, and we're saying those are not acceptable. You know, fertility is one of the things. The ability to bear a child is one of the things that makes men and women different. And we have taken that and we've said, we're not gonna allow that. We're gonna suppress that. And that's strange to me, but I wouldn't have realized that before NFP.
As a physician, I'm in favor of recommending NFP or letting people know about it, because I think as a profession, medicine has really let women down and has done a lot of harm in the whole area of contraception. And there's a lot of ground to be made up by getting the word out that natural family planning is there, first of all, that it's really effective, and that it's natural.
You know, people say that contraception was really invented to free humanity up for indulgence. And the problem is that indulgence is always selfish. And so often in a contraceptive culture, we are allowing sexuality and we are allowing sex to be selfish. And nothing in marriage can be selfish, or marriage falls apart. And insofar as you are in marriage using each other, insofar as you are selfish in your communion, you will be setting yourself up for disaster, because the imitation, the pattern that Christ set out for us in Christian marriage is radical self-gift, self-denial, dying for the other, literally dying to our own desires, dying to our selfishness, and choosing to live for the beloved, for the other. In my case, that's the church, the bride of Christ. In the case of marriage, that's the spouse, the beloved.
I think when you really look at the get it now and have it now and, just immediate gratification, it really doesn't work well at the end of the day. We live in a world where, if I wanted to be in Hawaii by tomorrow morning, I could do it. I probably could do it.
I think that if NFP wasn't a part of our life, you would be filled with all these misconceptions that you're fed from the world. These misconceptions that you're fed about sex needing to be this way or that way, or has to be this way. And in a sense, the world, unfortunately, has this, and I hate to say it, this pornographic attitude towards sexuality.
The divorce rate's at 50% today. What I always say to the couples that I'm working with in preparation for marriage, I say, if we're going to live marriage in the terms of the world, the way that the world tells us to approach marriage, you, couple, will be living in a 50-50 chance. You'll be flipping a coin with your lives. And that's the reality of where marriage is today. There's no way around that. The reality of the invitation to a radical gift of self and an openness to God in sacramental marriage, really living out the fullness of Christian marriage, is that we get outside of the statistics, because Christ said to us that with God, anything is possible. With God, nothing is impossible. And so by opening ourselves, by opening marriage to the involvement of God, which is this sanctifying way of practicing the virtues, of being prudent and discerning and being open to His procreative power and His love and tying our love into His, when we do that, we get marriage outside of that statistic. And so no longer are we flipping a coin, because nothing's impossible for God.
Standing alone in this culture, well, you feel like you are sometimes. Like you're going against the stream, I guess. You're going upstream. It can be discouraging, but then when you surround yourself with people who have the same vision, it's okay. Or you hear inspiring words of our Pope, or you hear it from our priests that understand this vocation of marriage and call us to live out our vocation, then it's encouraging again.
For me, one of the biggest benefits also has been communication. Not just forcing you to have awkward conversations, talking about female anatomy before, in kind of a health class context. But for me, it was having a reason to start talking about things like children. Children are something we want. Ellen and I are also big planners. And so the fact that we had to start having this conversation almost immediately, even before we were married, are we going to be open to having a child on our honeymoon? Yes or no? That was a question we had to ask. And so the fact that we had to start talking about that so early allows us to still be planners, but it also kept reminding us that we have a decision to make every month.
It truly makes me as a woman feel like he's not just seeing me as my sexual parts being there for his pleasure. Like, it's the whole deal. And when you take me, you take all of me.
I think it's particularly good for men to grow into better communication with their wives about this, because for men it's so physical and kind of primal that refining skills of communication about it do not come about naturally.
For me, NFP has helped me to redefine that in my own mind and to see the sexual relationship as for what it is and what it's designed for. And what it's designed for is procreation. But it's also designed for to have a unifying effect. And you don't have to choose between, well, is it just for fun, or is it just for making babies? It can be both, and NFP acknowledges both. But it reminds you of the power of the sexual relationship within marriage.
The couples that I speak with who practice NFP, they are really at peace with themselves and in their marriage. They understand the fertility, they are closer, they communicate much more closely with each other. They also like the fact that it is safe, it is healthy, and it also is in line with their religious beliefs and their spirituality. That's very important, that they're following God's plan for married couples and for the marital act.
It is so freeing to live our marriage within the precepts of the church, to think a 2,000-year-old think tank, in a sense, that's teaching us, like a mother does, what's best for you.
Natural family planning helps couples to communicate. they realize couples who practice well natural family planning and understand the spirituality of it, they understand that the relationship involves that they become a true one flesh that involves communication, that involves planning, that involves praying together, that involves open to life, that involves a number of things.
When you meet a couple who's practicing NFP and they're living out their Catholic sacramental vocation to marriage, they're just generous. You see this great openness to each other, a more tender care for the other, because they're required to be communicating regularly about things that they otherwise wouldn't communicate about the woman's cycle, about timing, about abstaining, and about not abstaining. And so they're open to each other in a way that is unique and really romantic. When you spot a couple and you talk to them about NFP, there's a certain romance, there's a certain twinkle in the eye that you see often in newlyweds, but that I see all the time in couples that are 10, 15 years married, because NFP allows that romance aspect to remain, because sex hasn't been used up, so to speak. You can't just have it whenever you want it, you abstain. And so that in moments of coming together again, it remains romantic. It remains something beautiful that brings you back to the very beginnings of your coming together in marriage.
Although the Catholic Church teaches against artificial contraception, promotes natural family planning, many of its members aren't following the Catholic teaching in this regard. And so I really think that the uniqueness is in the position being here and many believers being over here. And a lot of the reason for that, I think, is just that we haven't been very open about the teaching or positive in how we speak about it. And I think we're getting there. I'm excited to be a part of that.
I think I've come to accept that regardless of what I initially thought, that NFP was just, this Catholic thing. Yes, it's practiced by many Catholics, but I think that it is a beneficial thing for non-Catholics as well.
The church holds up the standard that was set by Christ, and Christ set the highest standard. When you talk to people who are living marriage outside of the context of faith, or even when you talk to someone who's thinking about getting married, they'll often say, I want to get married because I want to have a husband or wife and kids, and I have this dream for my life, and in order for that to be fulfilled, I need to be married and I need to have kids. And you've stated everything in the first person. It's all introverted, turned in upon the self. And the invitation of our faith in all things is to be generous, to be selfless, and to be open, and that only works by grace.
I am very grateful that the Catholic Church has remained faithful to this teaching and hasn't lost a sense of deep reverence for the mystery of love and sex and procreation.
I think it's great that the Catholic Church has held on to this teaching as opposed to all the other denominations. The church came in and said, you need to do this thing. And I'm like, why? But I did it because I tried it out. It was natural. It was, kind of interesting. And Robert was really into it. And we were getting married, so we need to make these decisions together, etc. And then through practicing it, I've realized the benefit of it.
As Catholics, we don't believe that what happens in our bedroom is only between us as husband and wife, but that God is a big part of that. It says a lot about how amazing our church is. It stands firm in the face of the mainstream culture, but it also stands firm in the face of all other denominations. And it says, we are not willing to compromise something that is so critical, so important.
What we say when we look at Christian marriage is that to enter into the sacrament is to take up a covenant. It's not a contract. It contains sort of a contract, but it's really a covenant whose terms are lived out in communion with God. The man and the woman come before the altar, before the church, before the priest, before their family and friends, and promise their lives to each other in this reciprocity, this mutual interdependence that only makes sense and is only lived out in the context of faith. And so if that's the case, then we're saying that we can't live out the terms of this covenant without God. that God is absolutely essential to the living out of the Christian life, and in particular the vocation to marriage.
I do believe that NFP works with the plan that God intends for us, because it's easy to see how it works with the body that I have. So it works with my fertility. It acknowledges that it's there, and it acknowledges that it's a good thing.
To work with fertility is to basically say, you know, the body that I've been given is a gift, and so I'm gonna treat it as it is, as a gift.
Behind each human being, there is God's signature.
You come to understand that life is something you participate in with God at the helm. And if you're willing to let go, have the guts to be selfless, then you'll see amazing things happen in your marriage and in your family.
If I had one word to sum up NFP, I'd say wise.
I would say real. It keeps it all real. It keeps it real between you and your husband, because you're talking about all aspects of sex, when you can, when you can't, what's going on with my body, what's going on with your body. Keeping it real, and reality is beautiful because God's in it.
In one word, I would say NFP is hard.
I think NFP is hard, but because there's a lot of buts that make it worthwhile. So it's hard but healthy. It's hard but natural. It's hard but good for our relationship, our communication skills. It's hard, but it's given us the most wonderful blessing in our life, which is our little girl.
If I had one word to describe NFP, it would be love.
If I had one word to describe NFP, it would be a gift.
I want couples to have this conversation, regardless of whether they're currently using some kind of artificial contraceptive or they're totally on board with NFP or anywhere in between. Allow yourself to have that conversation.
Be open to learning about it, or if this is the first time you've ever heard about it, both of you be open to learning about it.
Don't settle for less when it comes to God's plan for procreation. Don't sacrifice the fullness of the gift of intimacy for the sake of convenience. Good things are worth working for, are worth investing in. And don't take the easy way out, because you won't reap the benefits that God intended for you.
A lot of people won't understand why you're making this choice, at least in my situation. The people in my life that know that I don't use contraception struggle with it and kind of even poke a little bit of fun at me about it, which is fine. But in the end, go ahead and give it a try. And I think that you'll find, I'm confident that you'll find that it'll have more benefits than you imagined.
It can transform culture.
Yes.
It can transform the culture one family at a time.
Give it a try, to not be afraid, to have faith that God's plan will give you the strength and the grace to live out your fertility and your marital covenant the way that it is meant to be lived.
I'm in favor of NFP, and I support it, and I want to get the word out because I've seen that it has changed lives and it has helped men and women to find a fullness they never could have expected in the gift of the call to holy matrimony.